My parents abandoned me emotionally my entire childhood. Now they want back in with a surprise. So I slammed the door and made their plan nothing but a fantasy. My reality, as the youngest by 8 years, stuck in a family that had zero bandwidth left for me, honestly sucked. I wasn't the star athlete like my brother Connor, or the troubled teen like my sister Amanda who needed constant therapy. I wasn't even the middle child with learning disabilities like my brother Derek. I was just there. A literal afterthought. My parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell, weren't evil people. They were just overwhelmed. My older siblings were all dealing with various crises. Connor's football injuries meant endless physical therapy sessions. Amanda's eating disorder required weekly counseling and constant monitoring. Derek's dyslexia meant tutoring appointments and IEP meetings with teachers every month. Mom and Dad's lives were a constant rotation of doctor visits, therapy appointments, and parent-teacher conferences. And me? I was the easy one. No trouble, no drama, no extra effort required. They assumed I was fine because I wasn't demanding anything. Turns out being the kid who's fine means you're also the kid who's forgotten. I remember one evening when I was about 9, Mom was frantically packing overnight bags for Amanda's stint at an eating disorder clinic in Denver. Dad was yelling about misplaced insurance cards, and Connor was complaining about his knee brace being too tight. Derek sat at the kitchen table, struggling with his homework while tears streamed down his face. I sat on our old leather couch with a copy of Charlotte's Web in my lap, just waiting. I wasn't even sure what I was waiting for. Someone to notice me, maybe. Someone to ask if I needed help with my own homework, or if I wanted a snack, or just how my day went at Roosevelt Elementary. But no one did. Eventually, I just went upstairs to bed without saying goodnight to anyone. It wasn't a one-time thing. That's just how it was in the Mitchell household. They call kids like me glass children. You're visible, but no one really sees you. You're not invisible in some tragic poetic way, more like furniture in the corner of the room. Functional, present, but ultimately unnoticed. I didn't need help, so I didn't get it. I didn't cause problems, so I didn't get attention. I know my parents weren't trying to be neglectful. They were just stretched thinner than pizza dough at Tony's Pizzeria downtown. But knowing that didn't make it hurt any less. It wasn't all terrible though. Since no one paid much attention to me, I had incredible freedom. I spent hours alone in my room, reading everything from Nancy Drew mysteries to Stephen King novels I probably shouldn't have been reading at 10 years old. I'd ride my purple Schwinn bike through Oakwood Park for hours, pretending I was exploring uncharted territories. Looking back, it was probably a little sad, this 9-year-old girl creating elaborate fantasy worlds because her real world felt so empty. But at the time, it felt normal. It was just life in the Mitchell house, where Elizabeth was always the afterthought. But that would all change when I discovered I wasn't alone in feeling forgotten. When I was 10, I made my first real friends, Hopper and Zoe. They were both from chaotic families too, and we kind of gravitated toward each other like magnets. Harper's parents were divorced and spent most of their energy fighting about custody and child support, so she practically lived at Zoe's house on Maple Street. Zoe's dad had left when she was 7, and her mom Carol worked double shifts at the West Side Medical Center to keep the lights on. We were all these little lost kids who found each other during recess at Roosevelt Elementary. I think that friendship saved my sanity. Harper and Zoe became my escape, my real family. We did everything together. Sleepovers where we'd stay up till 2 a.m. eating Oreos and watching The Princess Bride for the 100th time. We'd sneak into the old Riverside cinema through the back exit that never locked properly, sharing a single large popcorn between the 3 of us. By the time we hit 7th grade at Lincoln Middle School, we had our own little world. We even created a club, the Forgotten Club. We weren't being dramatic about it. It was just a name that fit. Our real families were disasters, so we made our own. But as great as Harper and Zoe were, there was still this gnawing feeling in the back of my mind. I wanted my parents to notice me. Not in some big flashy way, just something small. A simple "How was school today?" or "What are you reading now?" But those moments never came. I remember the day I got a perfect score on my Colorado State Assessment test in 6th grade. I practically ran home from the bus stop on Elm Street, clutching that paper with the big 100% circled in red ink. I burst through our front door, ready to share my accomplishment with someone, anyone. But the second I walked in, I saw Mom on the phone with Amanda's therapist, discussing another crisis. Dad was in the garage with Connor, adjusting his knee brace for the third time that week. Derek was at the kitchen table with his tutor, struggling through a reading comprehension worksheet. I quietly walked to our old Frigidaire refrigerator and stuck my test paper under a magnet shaped like the Colorado flag, hoping someone would notice. No one did. It stayed there for 3 weeks before Mom finally took it down to make room for Derek's spelling test that got a C+. By the time I started high school at Jefferson High, I'd stopped trying. I wasn't angry exactly, just resigned. If they didn't care, why should I? I poured all my energy into my classes and got a part-time job at the Oakwood Public Library downtown. I loved working there. Mrs. Henderson, the head librarian, was kind but never expected much from me beyond shelving books and helping kids find picture books. Plus, it meant I didn't have to be home. My parents barely noticed I was gone most of the time. I think they assumed I was always at Harper's or Zoe's house, and honestly, they were usually right. Senior year at Jefferson High rolled around, and I started applying to colleges. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not my siblings, nobody except Harper and Zoe, of course. I didn't see the point in getting my parents involved. They wouldn't care until they had to care, and by then it would be too late. My friends knew though. We made a pact to get into Colorado State University in Fort Collins and leave our hometown of Oakwood behind forever. It was the only thing that kept me going some days, the promise that we'd all escape together. When I got my first acceptance letter from CSU, I didn't even bother showing it to my parents. I just filed it away in my desk drawer next to my copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, and went about my day. It wasn't until I received my financial aid package that I realized I might actually have a shot at leaving. Between academic scholarships, Pell Grants, and work study, I could cover most of the costs. My grandmother, Patricia, the only family member who seemed to give a damn about my future, offered to help with the rest. She pulled me aside after Sunday dinner at her house on Cherry Street and said, "Lizzie honey, I don't trust your parents not to mess this up for you." Honestly? Same, Grandma. The day I left for college might as well have been any random Tuesday in August. No teary goodbyes, no last-minute hugs, no "we're so proud of you" speeches. I'd been gradually packing my stuff for weeks, moving boxes to my car bit by bit so it wouldn't be obvious. On move-out morning, I loaded the last of my belongings into my beat-up Honda Civic, a hand-me-down from Connor when he got his truck. Mom walked past me in the hallway while I was carrying my final box, barely glanced at it, and asked, "Doing some spring cleaning?" "Yep," I said and kept walking. That was the extent of our interaction. I wasn't mad about it anymore. By then, I'd stopped expecting anything from them. They didn't notice when I stayed out past midnight testing their limits. They didn't notice when I stopped joining family dinners. They certainly didn't notice that I'd spent months planning to move 3 hours away with my best friends. They probably assumed I was going to Front Range Community College down the street or something. Joke's on them. The drive to Fort Collins was the most liberating experience of my 18-year-old life. Harper rode shotgun while Zoe followed in her mom's old Toyota, both cars packed to the ceiling with our belongings. We blasted terrible early 2000s pop music the entire way, Britney Spears, NSYNC, all the classics, singing at the top of our lungs like we were starring in some cheesy coming-of-age movie. It wasn't just about going to college. It was about starting over. Starting fresh. Becoming people who mattered, people who were seen and heard and valued. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Elizabeth Mitchell, the forgotten daughter. I was just Elizabeth. We moved into this tiny off-campus apartment on College Avenue, and when I say tiny, I mean you could stand in the living room and touch both the kitchenette counter and the front door without stretching. It was falling apart in all the typical college rental ways. The bathroom faucet dripped constantly, the linoleum was peeling up in corners, and the bedroom doors didn't close properly. But we didn't care. It was ours. Those first few months at CSU flew by in a beautiful blur. I threw myself into my English literature classes and picked up shifts at Higher Grounds Coffee on campus, trying to balance everything while figuring out how to be a functional adult. Money was always tight. I had to learn how to stretch $20 to last an entire week, surviving on ramen noodles and whatever free food events offered on campus. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control. No one ignored me here because no one had any expectations of me to begin with. I could just exist as myself, not as the forgotten Mitchell kid, not as the easy one who never caused problems. Just Elizabeth. My parents didn't call. They didn't text. Nothing. At first, I wondered if they'd even noticed I was gone, or if they'd just forgotten about me entirely. But then, about 3 months into my freshman year, I got a random text from Mom while I was studying for my American literature midterm. "Can you pick up some milk on your way home from school?" I stared at that message for a solid minute, sitting there in the CSU library with my copy of The Great Gatsby open in front of me. Finally, I typed back, "I don't live there anymore." Her response came 20 minutes later, "Oh, okay. Let me know when you visit next." Like I'd just gone on some extended camping trip and would be back any day now. I didn't bother correcting her. Why would I? If she wanted to believe I was just temporarily away, that was fine by me. It's not like they'd cared much about what I was doing when I actually lived there. Meanwhile, Grandma Patricia became my lifeline. She'd call every couple of weeks to check in, ask how classes were going, and remind me that she had my back if I ever needed anything. She wasn't perfect, she had her moments of unsolicited advice about my wild college lifestyle, but at least she cared. She was the one who told me, "Don't let your parents mess this up for you, Lizzie." I didn't realize at the time just how prophetic those words would be. The disconnect between my parents and me became even more obvious when Thanksgiving rolled around my sophomore year. Harper, Zoe, and I had settled into our routine of classes, work, and hanging out in our cramped apartment in the evenings. We didn't have much money, but we'd managed to save up for our own Friendsgiving celebration. We bought the smallest turkey we could find at King Soopers, a box of instant mashed potatoes, and some canned cranberry sauce. 2 days before Thanksgiving, my phone rang while I was highlighting passages in my copy of Jane Eyre for my Victorian literature class. It was Mom, the first time she'd called in months. I almost didn't answer because I figured it was a butt dial, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hey, what time are you coming home for Thanksgiving?" she asked, completely out of the blue, like we'd been planning this for weeks. I blinked, nearly dropping my highlighter. I didn't know you guys were doing anything for Thanksgiving." "Well, we weren't sure, but we figured it'd be nice to have the family together for once," she said casually. "So what time can we expect you? I need to know how much food to make." "I already have plans," I said, glancing over at Harper and Zoe, who were sorting through our tiny pantry to see what we had for our Friendsgiving feast. "I'm hosting something with my friends." Long pause. Then, "Oh. I guess that's fine. It's just, I was really looking forward to seeing you." That one sentence hit me weird. I couldn't tell if she was trying to guilt-trip me or if she genuinely meant it. Either way, it didn't matter. She'd given me 2 days' notice, like I could just drop everything and drive 3 hours to play happy family with people who barely remembered I existed. "I'm sorry, but I can't make it," I said as politely as possible. "Maybe we can catch up another time." Silence. Then a sigh. "Okay, well, I hope you have a good Thanksgiving." She hung up before I could respond. That night, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. There weren't many of my family, mostly just pictures of Harper, Zoe, and me goofing around over the years. But looking through them, I felt this strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness because part of me still wanted to matter to my parents. Relief because I knew I didn't need to anymore. Friendsgiving was perfect. We burned half the food, Zoe spilled cranberry sauce all over our secondhand couch, and Harper set off our smoke detector trying to make gravy from a packet. But we laughed until our sides hurt, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was part of something real. That feeling didn't last long though. A few months later, I got another call, this time from Dad. I'd been avoiding family contact since the Thanksgiving situation, not out of anger but just exhaustion from feeling like an afterthought that suddenly mattered when it was convenient for them. When his name popped up on my phone screen while I was walking across campus after my modern poetry class, curiosity got the better of me. He barely ever called, even when I was living at home. "Elizabeth," he said, his tone clipped and serious. "If you don't come home for Christmas, I'm cutting off your college payments." I actually laughed out loud, right there on the quad. "Dad, Grandma Patricia paid for my college. You didn't contribute anything." The silence on the other end was almost comical. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Dad sputtered, "Well, I just meant, you need to come home. It's important." "Why?" I asked, stopping near the fountain in the center of campus. What's so important? It's Christmas, he snapped, like that explained everything. Family needs to be together. You're being selfish, Elizabeth. After everything your mother and I have sacrificed for you, the least you could do is come home for the holidays. I couldn't hold back another laugh. Dad, what exactly did you sacrifice for me? Because I'm pretty sure you didn't even notice when I moved out. He paused, probably trying to figure out how to salvage this ridiculous argument. We've given you everything over the years. It's time you showed some gratitude. Gratitude for what? The years of being invisible? The complete lack of support or interest in my life? The sudden guilt trips now that it was convenient for them? I've already made plans for Christmas, I said as calmly as I could manage. I'm not canceling them last minute. If you and Mom want to catch up after the holidays, we can talk then. You're abandoning your family, he said, his voice rising. Other students walking by started glancing in my direction. Do you even care about us at all? You didn't care about me for 21 years, I shot back, and now suddenly I'm the bad guy for not dropping everything to make you feel better? That's not fair. We've always cared about you, he snapped. You just never needed as much as the others. There it was, the same excuse I'd heard my whole life, wrapped up in slightly different words. That's not my fault, I said. And it doesn't mean I owe you anything now. He didn't respond. I figured the conversation was over, but a few hours later, I got a text from him, if you don't come home, don't bother coming back at all. I stared at my phone screen while sitting in Higher Grounds Coffee, my sociology textbook forgotten in front of me. Part of me wanted to fire back with something angry, but mostly I just felt tired. Tired of the guilt trips, tired of the manipulation, tired of being treated like a backup plan instead of a person. So I put my phone down and didn't respond. The next day brought a text from Mom. It wasn't as blunt as Dad's ultimatum, but it dripped with passive-aggressive guilt. We're so disappointed in you, Elizabeth. We don't understand why you're being so distant. We're your family. I laughed when I read that. Distant? I'd been distant my whole life, they were just now noticing. The texts kept coming from Mom, Dad, even Connor. They all seemed to be tag-teaming me, trying to guilt me into coming home for Christmas. It was relentless. Then, about a week before Christmas, I got a call from Derek, my brother with dyslexia who I'd barely spoken to in years. Hey Liz, Derek said, using the nickname I hadn't heard in forever. Look, I know things have been tense with Mom and Dad, but we need to talk. Okay, I said, already bracing myself. About what? Long pause. They've been talking about making you the legal guardian for Connor when they retire. My heart dropped. What? You're the only one who's really stable, he said, like it was the most logical thing in the world. The rest of us, well, we've got our own issues. Mom and Dad think you'd be the best choice to help him manage his medical expenses and everything. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After years of barely acknowledging my existence, they wanted to dump this massive responsibility on me? Connor was 29 and still dealing with chronic pain from his football injuries, unable to hold down steady work. And they just decided this without talking to me? I asked, feeling my anger bubble to the surface. They've been planning it for a while, Derek admitted. I thought you should know before they spring it on you at Christmas. No, I said firmly. Tell them I'm not interested. Liz, come on, he pleaded. You're part of the family. Family. I snapped. Don't talk to me about family, Derek. They ignored me my entire childhood. Now that they need something, suddenly I'm part of the family? No. I'm done. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment staring at the wall, trying to process everything. It wasn't just about Christmas anymore. They were trying to trap me, use me as their long-term solution for problems they'd created. A month later, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door expecting Harper or Zoe, but there she was with this desperate, strained look on her face. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into my living room. Your father's health is getting worse, she said, sinking onto my couch. The doctors say his heart condition is serious. We need you to step up, Elizabeth. Connor needs someone reliable to help coordinate his care when we're gone. No, I said firmly. I'm not doing it. Elizabeth, please, she said, tears forming. We're desperate. Derek can't handle it, and Amanda has her own problems. You're the only one who. The only one who what? I cut her off. The only one who got out and built a life for myself? That's not my fault. You and Dad made your choices. You chose to focus on everyone else and ignore me. Now you want me to fix everything? No. I'm not your backup plan. Her face crumpled, then shifted to anger. So you're just going to turn your back on us? No, I said, walking to the door and opening it. You turned your back on me a long time ago. I'm just finally walking away. After she left, I blocked all their numbers and tightened my social media privacy settings. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was choosing myself. And that felt like freedom.